So it gives me great pleasure to introduce you guys today to Myles and Luke from the band Schemata Theory. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening.
Absolutely, my pleasure. It starts off very professional like this, and it just sort of descends down just to sort of give you that front.
Perfect.
But you guys are based out of Reading, a place I know very well. And I hadn't actually heard of you guys until recently. I was sent your track Mind Eater, and yeah, loved it. Hence why you are here right now. But if I could start off just by getting your origin story, if you will, sort of where you guys came from, how long you've been around, what other releases you've got out, because we'll talk about the single and the album as well, which we'll talk about. But yeah, where did you guys come from? How long you know, the usual stuff, where you've been?
How long have you got?
You've got as long as you need or want.
You want to take it, Luke?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think much like a lot of other bands in sort of local music scenes, we're sort of an amalgamation of various different groups from sort of meeting in school and family friends from being younger, and so we all sort of started off in different bands at sort of like 15, 16 in school, and over the years sort of came together to become what we are now. So previously, Myles was the drummer in what Schemata Theory used to be, a band called Down Within, and I'd been in bands with Myles sort of years before that. And it was when we were recording the first album that Myles had recorded the drums on. The vocalist at the time stepped away, and me and Myles sort of stepped into that position of dual vocalists at that time to fill that gap, which was quite interesting because we had all of the music recorded for the first album, the debut back in 2012, and we were sort of coming in with a deadline, had to get everything sorted, all the vocals written and recorded pretty sharpish. I think only sort of a couple of months to turn it all around. So it was a bit of a baptism of fire for us two joining initially. It's been a bit of a whirlwind since then, to be fair. What were your thoughts sort of around the early stages, Myles, and a bit of a transition from the opening album in 2012?
Yeah, I mean, Lung Rhetoric, our debut album, definitely was an interesting process because we had both done our own kind of vocals in our own little projects, but never for an album. And so with this tight deadline, it was really a tough challenge that we really went for. And obviously looking back, we realized, you know, all the mistakes and learnings that come from that process. But the thing is, you know, you mentioned that you hadn't, you know, really heard of us before, and you know, later this year will have been 10 years that we've been about. But Lung Rhetoric didn't come after months or years of being a band. It was actually day zero. What we decided to do in sort of this digital age was to announce ourselves as a band once the album came out. We did it all ourselves. We had great response in the local scene. And I think the last 10 years, it's just been a really interesting journey of, you know, changes here and there, and constantly testing the waters. And I think it's why we're so excited when it comes to this being our second album. We've done some demos in between with Unity in Time that's out in a couple of weeks, because in some ways, I think it's a good thing, because if we manage to create something that we're incredibly proud of and we feel that is going to really be received well by people, to catch people off guard, I think is a good first step. And this album is definitely the amalgamation of, you know, 10 years of many learnings. And although we've always taken the band very seriously and put all our heart and soul into it, this was the first release where we really had a conversation as a band and said, look, are we going to really go for it with all cylinders, you know, firing in terms of, you know, from the financial standpoint, in terms of, you know, time for, you know, whether it's touring or, you know, doing merchandise, just really going for it every step of the way. And this album really does feel like the most honest artistic reflection of who we are as a band. And in many ways, Unity in Time I've mentioned on previous interviews that although it is about the themes of what the songs are about, it's also quite representative of who we are as a family and as a band, which is over time we have become so consolidated as this family, and we feel more unified and together. And so we're just really excited to get it out there. And your words about Mind Eater really means a lot, because we're now finally starting to hear the first instances of people's opinions on it, and it's really exciting.
No, that's awesome. I mean, it's mad. You've been around for 10 years. I'm almost ashamed of myself.
Well, you've got to take 2 years off because of the pandemic, I find.
Okay. And I wasn't in the country for 5 of those years, to be fair with you.
There we go.
So
7. So 3.
Yeah. So okay, 3 years for me anyway. But yeah, no, it's crazy because I always like I've always sort of been keeping my ear like close to sort of like local scenes. And obviously I'm not based in Reading, but I get the feed from that. I used to play a lot of gigs over there when I was in a band. I played like the Purple Turtle and the Fez Club back in the day, and all there was a bunch of other places anyway. But yeah, no, it's just strange coming out. Like I thought, brand new band. That's because I didn't look into like the bio or anything. Just to sort of see, I generally don't go searching unless I have to.
That's fair.
But I like to find out on the actual show as well. So obviously from your own words. But yeah, that's mad. I mean, 10 years. Like I said, even if it is 3 years, it's still you've got an album out there as well. So no, but that's really cool.
And I would just say that the album that we first launched with to now is there's a lot of the same sort of essences within it, the same architecture, but we are a much more evolved band, and it is because of some of the changes that we had along the way. So when our debut album was done, Carl, who was the bassist at the time, he was the composer of the music, absolutely brilliant composer who wrote complex intricacies within the music. And he stepped away after our demo that followed it. And so we had a real existential conversation as a band of like, well, the main composer's left. Can we still do this? And that was what actually led to the first few tracks that we wrote that then became this album that we've done. And there have been other things as well. I had a head injury, so a true headbanger about 6 years ago, which sort of took me out of it for 3 years. So it's kind of like you can't really pick at any particular event throughout our band's history. It's just been a very long process. And again, for us, it's some things take a long time. And, we're going to be very new to a lot of people, and we have no qualms about it. Like, we're just really excited. And we feel that, good things come to those that wait, not just by those that are going to hear it, but also for us as a band as well. We feel very comfortable in what we've done and really excited for that reason.
Excellent.
No, yeah, I think this feels like a real sort of relaunch. I think it's interesting what you're saying around sort of not having heard of us, and it's still strange to me to think that we've been around and doing this for 10 years. It doesn't feel like it's been 10 years at this point. But I think what we all want out of this is a bit of a fresh start and to sort of use this album to kick off what this Schemata Theory is, as Myles alluded to. Certainly musically, it's very different to sort of where we started with Dry Lung Rhetoric back in 2012, and it really does feel like a bit of a relaunch essentially.
That's really cool. I was going to say, you've got like people who are discovering you now, and like when your album comes out, there's going to be a bunch of people that discover you then, but they've also got something to go back on as well. So you've got that album from back then. You've got obviously you've got the demos floating around as well, I suppose, on the digital platforms and whatnot.
Yep.
So there's going to be plenty to sort. I'm going to go and look back on some of it when I finish this. So just to sort of catch up on that front. But let's talk about what you've got going on at the moment. The new single, Mind Eater. I was sent that. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. How's that done for you so far as a sort of reaction piece?
I mean, we've been really, really impressed by the response. And, because it is a relaunch for us, it does feel like in some ways small beginnings. But, in a world that is so noisy with so many songs and music releases left, right and center, it is about building things from the bottom up. And the community that we seem to be building, our tribe, as we call it, with those that support us, has just been really remarkable. People really connect with the music, whether it's just in terms of the aesthetics of how it makes them feel and sounds, their enjoyment. But then there's also a great community that really delves into the messaging behind it. And that's something we've always prided ourselves on as a band, which is, you know, first and foremost, we're a band that just wants to create music that we enjoy to write, enjoy to play, and hopefully, you know, we enjoy to listen to. But beneath that canvas of music, you know, there is messaging there for those that want to look a bit deeper. And there's nothing more amazing than, you know, playing live shows and seeing people mouthing along to the lyrics or sharing their experiences of how they connect. And so, yeah, Mind Eater is the third single we've done leading up to this album, following New Vision. And we started off with a track called Voices. And we might have time for just one more before the album release coming out soon.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just been amazing with this like new energy that we bring. And we're just really blown away again with all the messages and responses we've seen.
Nice. I mean, what sort of well, you mentioned them. What kind of like messages do you have in the tracks? I've sort of briefly gone over some of your bio things, and goes on, you know, current events and news and media and the use of that and things. Obviously, you know, very relevant right now. But what is your take on that?
I mean, so Unity in Time, as you say, goes across a lot of issues, and we like to always think that when we compose music, we're creating, you know, anthems. I mean, that's obviously up for judgment from those that are hearing it, but that's kind of the intention we come to, of we want to create anthems for, you know, different feelings and different takes in life. And so Unity in Time is about the importance of unity and connection, really. And that is connection in every part of life. It's the connection that we have with each other, whether it's family members or strangers that we engage with in day-to-day life. It's the connection that we have with ourselves, with, you know, mindfulness and mental health and well-being, the importance of being self-compassionate. But it's also the compassion we have, the connection we have with nature. It's very easy to always see ourselves as above nature. You know, humans exist on this landscape of nature when actually we are part of it. And then it's also the connection we have with the future and technology and the ways that things can be used. So there are, you know, tracks like Prism that looks at social media and the way that we live in this status economy where people are constantly trying to destroy each other. But then there are songs like Voices, which, although, you know, looks at the fact that voices have been used throughout human history for ways of tearing down and destroying others, they're also great methods for creation. And so it's understanding those powers of connection and being not complacent with that power, and realizing that we have an opportunity to use it to build connections as opposed to sowing seeds of division. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the main essence that goes throughout the album.
Nice. No, that's really cool. I haven't actually heard the album. I look forward to hearing it.
We'll sort that out for sure.
No, so I mean, it's very odd, actually, to be honest with you. I normally get an album or something like that, but this is quite good. It's quite refreshing, just having literally the one track. Like, that's all I've gone off on this, and like I said, I really enjoy it. I played it at my club the other night as well, like early doors, just sort of, you know, see how it sounds over a big sound system. And it sounded pretty cool then. So
we are glad to hear that.
Yep, definitely.
Last thing you want to hear is it was a floor clearer. Like, when we're trying to kick everyone out at the end of the night.
I wouldn't have mentioned that voice. No, it's
That's
like I put it on. I usually play new bands, new music in the first hour that I do, just to get them up there and see if any of them take, you know. Obviously, if any of them do, you push them up further in the night. It's kind of like if you're in a band, you start off as a support band and go up into the main thing eventually. But yeah, no, I DJ rock club in Guildford, and yeah, I play obviously new music there. Obviously, I play the usual classics as well. But yeah, no, it sounds nice over the sound system. So hopefully that's what you were looking for on there.
No, definitely. I mean,
100%.
When we get the mixes through, you know, we still on a phone, on a laptop, on speakers, but, you know, in a club is not always the thing that we have direct access to straight away. So
no. I remember doing the old car stereo check.
Yes.
And now it's phones. It's like, how does it sound out of this phone? You know,
it's so different. It's
terrible was normally the
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. You have to listen to it on a phone a lot, because you have to accept that a lot of people are going to hear it through their phone speaker. So it needs to sound at least reasonable in that manner.
Yeah. At least some phones are trying, I suppose.
Yep.
I can't. No, I'm not going to say it. I can't say it because I work for one of the companies. And
don't say that.
No. But yeah, no, it's really cool. Like I said, I look forward to hearing the album and everything. But what are your guys' plans, sort of with this release and everything? I know, obviously, with the COVID situation and stuff like that, it's very difficult for some bands to plan things. But what do you guys have in the pipeline at the moment to kind of aid the promotion of this release?
Yeah, so obviously COVID's been a real challenge. Like we've had this album ready to go for 2 years now.
Oh,
so
wow.
we recorded this January 2020 with the full intent to do a bit of a PR cycle, a couple of months, and get it out sort of middle of 2020, and we all know how that turned out.
Yep.
So it was just sort of just kept pushing it back and waiting to get into a relatively even keel, in a position where releasing an album isn't a complete failure. But I think we're in a much better place now. It's easier to start to get out there a bit more, and I know the guys did some touring sort of back end of the year to get themselves ready for sort of getting out there and playing this album. I unfortunately was unable to attend, having my wife had just given birth recently.
Okay, that's a fair enough.
A fair excuse.
But
only just. But yeah, so I sort of took a little bit of time away back end of last year, but fully back at it now. And we're currently trying to book as many dates as we can, essentially, for this year. So we've booked some time in March, where we're going to go on a bit of a tour. We are mainly there, I think, in terms of the dates that we got in the diary at the minute. Trying to book out sort of a couple of weeks back end of March, and then sort of festivals middle towards end of the year, assuming that all goes ahead, of course.
Yeah.
And probably the other side of it, Myles, is probably more of the sort of social media and sort of PR engagement, which you've probably got a closer handle on than I do, given my paternity leave.
Yeah. No, I mean, during the pandemic, it's about being more creative online than ever. And we've really just focused on nurturing our community that we've built. We have a community on Facebook, a group called The Voices, which not only just takes its name from the opening main track on our album Voices, but it's kind of to signify that we, both appreciate and respect those that support us. We don't want it to be a one-way conversation where it's like, here's our music, now go and, be voices speaking out there. It's kind of like, no, we want to hear, what you like about it, what you don't like about it. And it's been really, really cool to see that. And then we've also done some other ideas here and there. Most of us in the band, I think all of us in one way or another, are gamers. Cool. I'm in particular really into my virtual reality, and during the pandemic I've been a huge even more of a fan of Beat Saber, the sort of VR Guitar Hero style game of slicing blocks to the music. And it has a very vibrant custom mapping community, which I've always said Beat Games, who create the game, can't really openly endorse, because it is technically a black market of people that make maps for their favorite songs. People download it, but you're not downloading it with permission from the labels or the artists, even if they were technically up for it. And so they're in a tough situation where it's really engaged, community, but they can't really endorse it themselves. And so what we decided to do was we actually engaged with one of these custom mappers. We commissioned them for our second single, New Vision, to make a map in 3 of the difficulties: hard, expert, and expert plus. They made a custom Beat Saber map, and it actually went up end of November. And it was at a time when a lot of us got ill after tour. So while we were stuck in, we were able to go into like Twitch streams and request our own track and have conversations with all these Beat Saber players, who then actually played our track. And hundreds, if not thousands, of people have registered high scores. I've had the idea that we did behind it was that we were going to ask Beat Saber players from around the world to send footage of them slicing away to the track. And then in the next month, we're going to edit a music video, a new one of just people playing along to it in Beat Saber to sort of celebrate this unified force of gamers and music lovers around the world. But the only thing I would sort of add to this, because obviously I could talk at lengths about the awesomeness of VR and Beat Saber for our track, is, you know, there's a lot that happens online at the moment where there are reaction videos, and we've had it where people, you know, do live reactions to your music videos or your track, and it's amazing to see that sort of goggle boxification of music, to see, you know, people nodding along, or hopefully nodding along. We've had, you know, positive responses. There's nothing worse than seeing someone snoring on camera to it. But the thing about Beat Saber is it's visceral. They are standing in this virtual world and they are slicing blocks and using physicality along to the music. And so a lot of these players playing Expert Plus on New Vision, which, just as a quick synopsis, is a song about enduring adversity and getting through it, and being relieved when you get to the other side that you persevered. You see these players get to the end of this 4-minute track absolutely panting, and some of them have their heart rate on the screen, which really scared me, because I thought if any of them have a heart attack, it's going to be the biggest PR disaster ever for us. Fortunately, it didn't happen.
Bad PR, don't worry.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But they would get to the end and they'd be like hunched over, you know, breathing heavily. And, you know, we wouldn't just request a song, see them play and move on. You know, we'd spend half an hour having a conversation with the people in the chat. They were blown away that someone from the band was there. And I was saying, like, this is what the song is about. And so we wanted it that when you got to the end of this track, you felt a sense of relief that you finally made it. And it was amazing to see that connection, that not only were they connecting with necessarily the feeling of the music and the messaging, but the physicality of it. They were actually like living the song. And that is something that I think we all suspected was going to happen in some way, but actually seeing it happen hundreds of times it has just been unbelievable, and makes us want to definitely engage with that platform again.
That is amazing. I absolutely love that. I mean, I'm a gamer myself, you know, and the use of that is that's great. I can't put it into other words. It's like as a PR exercise anyway, like looking at it from that point of view. But you know, it's kind of an untapped market, if you will, for a lot of bands, or a lot of like press agency or whoever will not think of that. You know, it takes someone who knows about that to do that, if that makes sense. It's like making, you know, going back a little bit further, like with those big games of Dance Dance Revolution and Rock Band, Guitar Hero, DJ Hero, things like that, you know, and being, I know there are, like you say, like that community out there that do put their own maps in to them, and you know the artists don't get any, like, you know, revenue from it, as that, you know, unless it's already in the game. But like just using that, I mean, obviously the meaning behind the track as well, kind of, it falls into that, but actually also going to spend time with these streamers that are doing this, because they do appreciate. I learned a lot of like stuff over lockdown with Twitch, with that community. I did online DJ sets and things like that, you know, and interacting with people while you're doing it. It's something it was very different from the club. In the clubs you get, and like gigs, you'll get connections with the crowd because you're playing, you're feeding off their energy. It helps you, helps them, helps you. It's that kind of to and fro. And initially with like the online platforms, it was very different. It was like, how do we get this to work? And it, you know, with the chat room and everything, and we ended up having live cameras on our feeds and stuff like that, so people were dancing at home with their kids or whatever. You know, it was all very much that whole sense of community, which you talked about. But yeah, just sort of that whole community on the streaming sites, or mainly Twitch, to be fair. But you know, and just like being able to connect with that as well, like with something quite niche in that respect, you know. But
niche is always where it's at, because that's where the most engagements or anything, which I know you were leaning on there. And the other thing we'd say is, as a band, we were very careful with this project, that we didn't want to be, as I've touched upon already, you know, commission a track, go in there, hey, play our track, right, see you later, bye. And just kind of like use it. Like we wanted to be a part of it. And it's why we do feel that we need to look at doing something else with the Beat Saber community, because again, like I think there's like 20 to 30 videos of our track Vision of just people playing it on Beat Saber, which is just mind blowing. Some of the biggest streamers in Beat Saber have done it. One of the rooms I went into, I requested it. And I would always say, just to let you know that I've requested a track from my band that we commissioned, hope that's okay. And this guy just like paused whatever request he was doing, looked at the chat, and then selected ours and played it. He played Expert Plus 100%, not one mistake. He wasn't even heavily breathing, and went, that was pretty good. And then went on, and it turned out he was like the 4th best in the world. I didn't know that at the time. And it was just like, it blew my, he's a guy with like 1 million subscribers and stuff like that. But yeah, we just wanted to make sure that we were working with the community, and again, not at them. And it just totally mirrors how we operate as a band when we play shows, when we have interviews like this, when we, talk about our music, and how we operate, at practices, and with everything that we do, that we are just about, real connection and compassion. And it's just important that is through and through everything that we do as a band.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Totally appreciate that. That is kind of almost above and beyond a lot of reach, especially on reach of a lot of other bands. Not to diss their efforts. But you're right. Sometimes there is a one-way conversation from them. It's like, I'm doing this, that's it. And I'm releasing this, and that's it. And then there's people, they do comment, but it's like, if you don't reply to it, you don't communicate, you're not going to keep those people engaged. And it's all about
for sure,
it's all about connection,
and sometimes we fall into that trap ourselves. Like, we are definitely not beyond error, and there are times in the campaign where we probably could have invested a bit more time in communicating stuff. But this is, especially with the rate of change with online media, you're looking at like Facebook shares recently going down because of the rise of TikTok, in terms of watch time above YouTube. Like, I remember the days, I'm sure you remember the days of MySpace, thinking, this unstoppable force, how is it ever going to be topped? And like, we look at MySpace now and think, didn't see that coming.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd like to say over like specifically over the pandemic, I became a social media specialist for the radio station TotalRock, in fact, which so I had to learn. I knew the major platform, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that kind of stuff, but I had to learn what TikTok was about. And I've managed to organically grow an account on there for TotalRock. We haven't got any money to put on there, but it was certainly an experience. And like any other new kind of like platforms that come along, it's quite you have to work out the proper way of doing it. Because there's a way, and then there's like the organic way, then there's the paid way. It's not all about becoming viral and things like that. It's about building that community and finding people on there that that want to be part of it, or you feel that it'd be good to connect with. So I connected with a lot of bands, a lot of artists, old and new, and it's the same. I've always done it with every platform that's been around. And like you say, MySpace, that was my jam, if you will, back in the day, with all the coding and getting people, and like and I was in a band at that point, so it was perfect for music distribution on your own personal page or the band page. You could it was totally open to do everything, and then it got topped by everything else. Poor Tom.
I think you're right though. I think it just depends what you want to get out of it. I think we in the past have been have gone down the money into sort of ad revenue and just trying to get the sort of the music in front of eyes. But about where we get anything back from it, it's the engaging with the fans and engaging with the community that you actually get something out of it. Like, it's all well and good having 100,000 plays on YouTube or whatever, but if you're not engaging with that community, then that's just a one-time thing. You're not going to get repeat listens and all of that down the years. People coming to gigs, people buying merch, all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've got a short time left with you. according to my Zoom. I've got the free account. I'm cheap. Um, I'm going to ask you my sort of like my sort of wrap up questions, if you will, if that's all right. But before I do that, I just want to thank you for your time in case we get cut off. Hopefully we won't. We'll get this done. But
well, if it cuts off, can we jump back on, or will it not let us?
Oh no, we could. Yeah, probably can do that.
We're happy to do that.
Okay, cool,
Yeah.
Awesome. All right then. Well, let's go through these questions. So what I want to find out from both of you, just sort of, it sort of ties in with your origin stories, if you will. But what I would like to know is your 3 most pivotal albums. Now, what I mean by that is like the album that made you want to be in a band, made you want to pick up an instrument, the album that inspired what you do now. You know, it can be old, it can be new. It doesn't have to be like your top 3. It's just those like honorable mentions. Like at that point, that album hit me and it made me do this. So I could start with Myles, if you want to
go. I'm just writing. I'm writing some stuff down in front of me. I mean, the first obvious one for me would be Fear Factory Digimortal, and it's a very controversial choice for a Fear Factory record, but it was actually in joint with another album that I'll mention in a moment that opened my ears and mind to the world of metal. I grew up on 80s pop music, huge Duran Duran fan, was into electronic dance music like Daft Punk. And then I had Kerrang TV at my parents' place, and I saw this band Fear Factory talking about linchpin.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, this is so heavy, but the chorus vocals are incredible. And what I ended up doing was buying their albums in reverse order, going all the way back to concrete, death metal. And because I bought it in that order, I was becoming subjected to heavier and heavier music. And that was my gateway drug into the world of metal. So yeah, Fear Factory, Digimortal for sure. Tied with that, Linkin Park Hybrid Theory.
Cool.
Again, it was the same sort of time, just the kind of EDM, not fully, but like sort of the the hip hop elements, the DJing aspects of it. Again, I always love hybrid music that brings together. And then I just think, as I was growing up, Scenes of a Memory by Dream Theater, that concept album totally blew my mind. And it was the idea of like how albums can really become bigger than the sum of all their parts when it comes to concepts and like going on a journey. And I think that's definitely fed into a lot of the ways that I see albums. Even if you don't do a concept album, it's just the idea of themes and the importance of bringing stuff together and storytelling.
No, that's awesome. I mean, those are 3 solid albums. I mean, I love Fear Factory throughout the years, up till now as well. Was lucky enough to have Dino Cazares on my show. Which was
really awesome,
which was amazing because I met him once years ago in London, and he was really nice, to be fair, but I was like a bit like, I was young and like, oh my god, it's but like getting actually to speak to him properly was really nice. But yeah, Linkin Park as well, that's a lot of people's sort of gateway to the sort of heavier aspect of music, as well as that crossover sound, which you mentioned. I've noticed people of a certain age, you're probably much younger than me, so that was their band, that was their era of time. And Dream Theater, amazing, just amazing.
Dream Theater is a band that I've just never been able to keep up with, though. I mean, they just keep pumping out albums, and it's why I don't listen to them much anymore, because I'm just exhausted. Like, I can't keep up. Like, fair play to them, like, huge respect. I just can't keep up with their albums.
Take you on a total journey every time.
Yeah.
But Luke, you've had some time to think about this, so what are your?
I have, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure it's helped. I think if anything, it's made it worse. I've just been going through various different albums, trying to whittle it down to 3. I think I've tried to do it sort of in reverse order, sort of the latest first. I'm not sure I'll succeed in that, but I think the first one that comes to mind would be 2112 by Rush.
Okay.
So a lot of my musical influences have come from my dad. He's a big music fan, and Rush are his favourite band. So I remember listening to a lot of sort of his musical taste, what he would refer to as metal, when he was younger, that I would refer to as cock rock, probably. But I think 2112 was the first album that I listened to, and it sort of showed me what music could be in that space. Broad storytelling, just insanely technical musicality, and vocals that you have to get used to enjoy.
Yes.
Which over the years I've moved towards that sort of space. So yeah, that was sort of my intro, I would say.
Cool.
I've got a third one. I'm struggling with the second one, but the third one is The Trees Are Dead and Dried Out by Sixth.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
So little bit obscure, but I remember coming onto that album when I was in school, and I remember having to listen to it sort of 3-4 times to get it. And it was the first album that I'd listened to that I'd had to work through, and I'd have to put some time in to really understand. And I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who hadn't listened to it yet, and saying, "Look, I give it a couple of tries, give it a couple of listens through first, and then come back to me and tell me what you think." But I just absolutely adored what they did on that album. It wasn't probably the earliest heavy metal music that I heard, but it was so different when I listened to it to stuff that I'd listened to before it, and getting to then work with Justin in the studio years later was unbelievable for
nice.
me. The third one. The third one's quite difficult. I'm gonna go with. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna go off piste. August and Everything After by Counting Crows.
Okay. Nice.
So this goes back to sort of the sort of dad's influence in my musical taste, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it was just the first album that I went back to over and over and over again. And I love the vocals. I love the sort of blues rock sort of sound to it. And I still put that album on in the car and sing along to it when I'm going whenever. And yeah, I think it I'm not sure it influenced my vocal style over the years, but I think it definitely led me down a path. It was certainly one of the first albums that got me into that space.
Nice. No, I mean those are again 3 solid options there. I mean, Rush.
Thank you.
I love Rush. My DJ name, in fact, is from a Rush song, so that's how much I like them. My DJ name comes from a Rush song. My DJ name is DJ Force 10, which comes from the Rush song Force 10, which is on. Oh god damn it! Why can't I remember the name of the album?
I can't either.
It's a red cover, and it's the first track. And I can't remember which one it is. I'm gonna have to quickly look that up because otherwise that's gonna Hold Your Fire. There you go.
Hold Your Fire.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, Sixth are a band that I've known very well. Back when I was in the metal community, like playing in band, we played with them quite a few occasions. A couple of times in Reading, in fact. So I don't know if you ever went to any of their shows early on, but played at the what's it called now? Used to be the Fez Club.
Sakura. It's into.
Yeah.
No, it's not Sakura. It's
no, it's not. It's
it sounds something. It's now got like a rooftop bar and everything. It's like just down.
Yeah, it's really fancy. Yeah.
Oh, it is now. Never used to.
Oh yeah. Fez definitely wasn't.
No, the Fez was. It was. I just remember it being a big like couch on the floor.
Yeah.
And everything like that. It was very. Weird. Yeah, there's many like if COVID was anything, it was that. But yeah, no, I've known Pin and Mikey and Justin and all that for quite a while, from back then, and it's nice to see them still sort of like some of them still going with Sixth, and some they've done. Obviously Justin in the studio, absolutely amazing. Some of the stuff he's produced is crazy good, but no, that album's really good. That Sixth album, absolutely fantastic. It's I mean, I've got like all their stuff on CD somewhere around in this garage. Back to like early demos of like Pussyfoot and such the Fool and stuff like that, and used to go down so well. I used to do like hardcore hours at rock clubs, and that stuff, them and like Stamping Ground and stuff like that used to go down so well. And not a lot of people remember that, which is a shame, because I would love people to still be dancing to that sort of stuff. But
I used to have a lot of respect for rock and metal DJs that would play Sixth in clubs. I used to go to a lot of when I was living in London.
Yeah,
used to go sort of regular rock and metal nights.
Nice.
And there was one or two that would go into that sort of area of the catalogue and wouldn't just play Paramore the whole time.
No, it's very easy to play Paramore all the time. But yeah, no, back then, like I say, I used to do like hardcore sets. So it's that Stamping Ground, Vision Disorder, Cro-Mags, like all the sort of classic hardcore. And there was quite a community for that hardcore sort of sound. Obviously, Sixth were more like progressive sound, so that kind of Meshuggah thing going on. Or the gent thing, if you want to give it its name, or whatever it is now. What is it now? Is it progressive? I don't know. Keeps changing its name.
Who knows?
It's like hybrid new metal, because it's like playing like the
dude. And when it comes to genres, like even when we were sorting all the press out for this album, and you get asked the question that you feel you should have already sussed out, like what genre would you call yourselves? And it's the biggest existential crisis ever, because you're straight away going, are we progressive post-hardcore, which we have gone with, but it's like a lot of the times over the years we just said we're metal, and you just put onto it whatever you want. But it is amazing how much, especially like the term metal, like what we regard metal from 10 years ago is stuff that's now regarded as metalcore in some ways, and a lot of gent now is just seen as metal. Like the genre shifting, it's always been mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, eventually it all comes in, because they need something to market. They need something to put you in order to market. And I was part of the like new metal side of things back in the day. You can see behind a couple of turntables. I was the DJ in said band, so
that's awesome.
scratching and everything. But and that immediately put us in that new metal genre. So we didn't fight it. We were just like, yeah, that's fine, but we'll continue to do what we do. But yeah, they like, especially a lot of the press, they need you to be in something so they can say Berkshire new metalers, Berkshire progressive hardcore punk, back around new wave. Having worked in that field for a while, you know exactly what they're trying to do. But I mean, back to your third album, your Counting Crows. Yes, a fine band. I'm not up on what they do. I know I've heard them, I've listened to them, my wife likes them, so it's
she got good taste.
Yeah, I'll tell her that. She needs to hear that. So but yeah, no, sorry, I mean those are like all 6 of those albums, artists are like, it's completely different, but I can hear that in that track. I can hear some of those influences, which is great, and sort of that's why I ask those questions. You can rattle off your top 3 albums of all time, anywhere. It can be like usual sort of one people I speak to. It's like the Black Album, it's Appetite. It's those sort of like big, epic albums. But I always want to find out the pivotal ones, like the ones that made a difference to you. And sometimes, like if I haven't heard them, I'll go back and listen to them.
I definitely can't wait for you to hear the full album. I mean, I'd be saying that anyway, promoting it, but genuinely, because of the diversity of where we all come as band members, like we all, like the similar bands, we'll all go every year to see Architect play live. We're united across a lot of music, but we also have a lot of our own things that we listen to. And what I've always loved about Schemata Theory is our music has always been quite diverse. This album is going to have a lot of different flavors to it, because we just write what we enjoy. And I mean, even vocally, between Luke and I mean, we have quite different vocal styles, not just the fact that I'm the screamer and he's the singer, but in terms of like, we have styles that are used in quite often different kinds of music, but we've always really enjoyed the way we've been able to match them together. And what has always surprised me is when we've played pub shows or gigs where the audience aren't just there for metal.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that come up to us, especially actually with the Beat Saber campaign as well, people who are like, I'm not normally into this music, but I really like it. And I find that quite exciting as well about the process, that we seem to tap in for whatever reason that is. And it's really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. It's just like, I can totally like align with that as well. Like going back to my days, like when we got put on a random bill of like, say, indie bands and stuff like that, it was always really good. Like we always looked at it like, oh shit, we're with, some, indie band at the time. It was kind of like, whatever, it was like Oasis style sort of bands were, but the people there who weren't there to see us were really like taken back by it and like really enjoyed it. Like it's not what I normally hear. It's not what I normally go for, but like having it live there, it just they get lost in that moment, which is amazing. I love that feeling. It's so
yeah.
And it's nice after looking at a lineup and going, oh, your fans are going to hate us, and then to actually play the gig and go, oh no, they think it was all right.
I think you play extra, like a little bit extra for them, because you're like they're not going to like us, not going to, so you play without fear, which is like for being in any situation, playing without or doing something without fear is, it totally liberates you. But it's one of those things where you just like, they're not going to like us, so it doesn't matter, we'll play this gig, we're getting paid or whatever, if you're lucky enough to get paid. But you play it, but you end up playing, I don't know, it just feels a lot tighter, a lot better, less pressure, because you're kind of in your head, you're like, they don't care. But then they get
you're just playing it because we're five guys that love making music together. And actually that should be every gig. We should just be on stage going, we're just doing this because we love it, and you normally get a much better performance out of it. You're right.
Cool. Well, I got one last question for you guys, and then I'll let you get on with the rest of your evening. But what are your hobbies away from music? So when you're not doing this, and I know you've already touched on VR and things like that, but do you have anything else that you kind of, what that's yours, to sort of not separate yourself, but if you ever need to sort of like do something else, what are your other hobbies?
So I could probably jump in quickly. So I think Myles has obviously touched on gaming, which is a sort of a shared hobby across most of the band, and is probably the second most place where my money goes. Second after the band, third now actually after a 6-month-old child. I'll stick that in because I'm sure my wife can hear me upstairs if she's worrying that. But yeah,
you just didn't mention it because that's assumed. That's like ring fenced
on that basis.
That's its own league. Yeah,
thank you, mate. Yeah, cheers for that. I think in the main, music is my escape in the same way that gaming is. And because it is somewhat of a hobby, and at this point is also something we do semi-professionally, there's still I feel like there's a separate part of music that I can sort of step into, and it's not the writing music, it's not writing songs, it's not lyric writing and practicing and all that sort of stuff, but I can still lock myself in a room and listen to the new Venom Prism album. I've been listening to a lot over the last week, and I still love that. That's still something that I really enjoy, and acts like a bit of an escape for me.
Cool, nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult. I mean, I grew up as a huge movie fan. I still technically am, but I do have some self-disappointment of how little I actually engage with movies, also with TV series. But I think it's just that we live in this digital abundance of options, whether it is albums or it is TV shows. You get good recommendations from people you respect. Luke's really good at being on top of like all the latest releases. And, I would love to listen to them all. And I just can't because there's only so many hours in a day.
Yeah.
And when it comes to movies and TV shows, I don't lean into them as much as I would love to. I've tried to make an effort more recently. especially with the latest Spider-Man movie and looking at all the films around that. But yeah, for me, it is definitely gaming. VR feels very different to regular gaming because a lot of them are in social spaces. And during the pandemic, I think it's been more poignant as well of a platform. But for me, I've always been a content creator. I'm a first generation YouTuber. I don't do it as much anymore, but I do a weekly live show, which is good fun to sort of keep that pulse going. I also do a podcast show called The Quest for Global Empathy, which are long form conversations with people from around the world. And so I've always been quite an activist at heart, but even it's a hobby in the sense that although I do touch upon specific issues, my activism is more about activism itself, of like how we conduct ourselves. And I just get a lot of joy in having conversations with people, and that taps into like mental health and well-being and things like that. So it's kind of like when I'm not gaming and not working, I think it's just like creating content and doing things that feel productive to me.
Cool. No, that's awesome. I'll have to check out your podcast.
I'll sure link it
online. But yeah, no, that's really cool. Like having these outlets and like music for me, as you were saying, Luke, like that is it's a hobby in itself, like listening to music. And I mean, I'm quite lucky. I get sent a lot of stuff like pre-release, obviously not your stuff there, but you know, and I get to absorb before it gets out into the main sort of like area, or the public domain. And like sometimes, you know, I don't get that privilege. Some bands don't release their stuff until the day of, and I get it then. But I still, you know, I have like you say, that digital abundance as well of everything. Trying to listen to everything is it's very difficult.
It's both a nice problem to have, but also it is just very depressing, because once upon a time it was finding out from your friends what is the good album to listen to or what's the good movie. It's now which good movie should I check out left? Well, it depends on what you're feeling like, and paralysis of choice, you know. It's the good old days of talking about like Sky TV having hundreds of channels and you spend what, you know, an hour flicking through it.
Yep.
Or actually that's what you used to do at Blockbuster, wasn't it?
Yep.
Blockbuster, you spend an hour deciding what you want to the rent, and then when you've decided, you realize someone's rented it already, so you don't have access to it. It is just such a bizarre world that we used to live in compared to now, but a lot of those problems still exist of the paralysis of choice.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I mean, going through, I mean, I subscribe to multiple like subscription services on that front. I have a young family, so I have Disney. I have, you know, I use Amazon, I use Netflix, all that kind of stuff, because they're all available. But yeah, I found half the time is scrolling. And I used to work in a video store as well back in the day. And yeah, the amount of time people spent just browsing and trying to pick a film. It's very much I just like, I instantly see it as just like flicking through Netflix or through whatever service. But I find that with the music services as well, because it's such a now a level playing field. Like bands release stuff all the time, and normally you go back wherever I go to the local record shop, which was the Rock Box for me in Camberley, and you sort of find out what was good, what was out, you know, what was the latest release, or you'd read the magazine and find out, you know, some such and such is releasing an album. But now it just sort of falls into your lap and you're like, oh, hey, you know, this is something totally like, you know, I still try and get my head around it, but I still go to the record stores and I still just sift through like new releases the same way. And then, you know, I have a habit of doing the try before I buy, whereas before I was buying regardless.
Right.
I don't have the disposable income anymore to do that, but you know, I would still love to own the physical product when it comes to that. I mean, digital platforms are great, don't get me wrong, but like, it's renting the music. It's like Netflix. You don't own those films. They'll go on and off that service. And the music side of things, you know, most of the time, most of the stuff will stay on there, but sometimes, you know, artists will remove stuff if they want to get a deal or a better deal or whatever. You know, the whole thing going on with Joe Rogan and all that kind of stuff on Spotify, and some artists pulling their stuff. which is totally understandable. But also, I mean, that's something that I feel as well when it comes to music, that artists like yourselves don't get paid enough for that. And not to go on a sort of like massive rant about it, but the only way it's going to change is if the big bands remove their music and say, hey, we're not going to do this until this is right.
Yeah, I was actually watching one of the creators that removed over Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan I've listened to many times before. I'm not saying I think some of his stuff has been problematic, but it was the whole thing about him using the N-word over the years, and this person had done a compilation, and so like the main narrative online is these are the people that just want him cancelled. And I was watching it, and it was a black artist who says, I get paid 0.003% from Spotify, and he gets $100 million with this kind of content. And so I want us to be paid. And she was saying how, the majority of Spotify's plays are from arts, they are the backbone of the platform. And so why aren't they getting their fair share of revenue? And I thought, obvious point that was refreshed to me when she mentioned it. And I was like, that's interesting that that's not the conversation that's being had at the moment. It's this culture war with it. And so, yeah, it's just a great example in society of how the us versus them is used a lot to divide us. And it's sort of bring it full circle with the album Unity in Time. But it's when actually we look at what unifies us, yeah, all artists should be paid more for their work. But the thing I would also say is, as a band from our first debut album, we always were of the attitude of, people were going to stream music and there's not much money in it. So the way you embrace that as an opportunity is you therefore invest in things that people can't pirate, as Luke was touching on earlier, merchandise, good live shows.
Yep.
And then the other thing you mentioned about, things falling in your lap, music and, the abundance of choice. Hugh, our guitarist and the composer, has always made the great point that, once upon a time as musicians, your objective was to become the best band in your local music scene. And then you would go to the county and then national and then conquer the world. We now live in a world now where we all have a level playing field, as you say, and therefore any music you do, even if you are 16-year-old artists that are just starting out, if you're putting music out there, you have to be more captivating than in metal, Metallica or, Architects, because people are only one click away from choosing something else. And so, the thing we were mentioning about nurturing these tribes and our audiences, and Luke was talking about, you can have reach of 100,000. Yeah, that is important. And as he rightly said, it's actually about engaging and building these relationships, because that does take time. And that is the stuff that will stick with you in the long run. And when I think of like some of the artists that have really achieved great stuff, whether it was David Bowie, who was constantly reinventing himself. And so, you can't say that you were necessarily a fan of him for one particular style of music, because he was constantly evolving. And my mum's a huge fan, or was a huge fan of Keane, who were changing album on album. I'm a huge fan of Enter Shikari, that have constantly reinvented themselves. They are bands that offer something quite unique, that when people become a fan of them, they tend to stick, because they're not going to really get it elsewhere. They become a part of this identity and identify with the artist at hand. And, we're not here to compare ourselves to these fantastic artists who've achieved great things, but we'd like to think that our road to success, if we can achieve it, is creating something that people identify with and build a relationship with, so that as long as we stay true to ourselves as artists in creating things around this identity, that people will stick with us for the long run.
Nice. Well, on that, I think we're going to leave it there.
Sounds good.
I think that's good.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Myles, Luke. Absolutely fantastic. Good luck with the album. It's out on the 25th of February. It is called Unity in Time, which we've mentioned a few times during this. But while you're there, anyone who's watching, go listen to their singles. You got Mind Eater, and it was it Voices and New Vision, the other ones?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you might drop another one in the next?
We'll see.
Maybe.
It's planned. I.e., very likely.
Down in a couple of weeks. So 25th.
Yeah.
The day before my birthday. So,
Awesome. It'd be rude not to drop another single and potential music video. Yeah. But we'll just have to wait and see.
Cool. Well, guys, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you, mate. Cool. Take care.
Thank you, guys.